Helen Cole Gardner graduated from the Maryland State Teachers College at Towson 3-year teacher certification program in 1935. Mrs. Gardner taught for 3 years before marrying and becoming a full-time mother and homemaker. These are her reflections.
Mrs. Gardner, I'm really appreciative that you've invited us into your home and you're going to share with us some of your experiences when you were a student at the Maryland State Teachers College at Towson and a little bit of what happened after you graduated. But the first thing I'd like you to share, if you would, is something about your growing up, where you were born, and when you decided that you thought you might want to become a teacher.
Well, do you want me to say it right now?
Sure, that's perfect.
Okay. My aunt had been a teacher first grade. She had never married.
Uh-huh.
And she was that her whole life working, her lifestyle of working was first grade.
Uh-huh.
And she continued to teach first grade all through her working days down in Anne Arundel County, where she had grown up.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was such a wonderful life. I imitated her.
Uh-huh.
And she really taught me a lot. For instance, the first day I ever taught, I knew you were supposed to have lesson plans, and we had a good introduction by the supervisor
Mm-hmm.
for how to make lesson plans. But when I got there to school, I sort of didn't pay any attention to my lesson plans. I just went with the flow. And we had a lot of fun the first day. And the first day had started off first grade. Kids had never been to any preschool.
Right.
And some of them cried until their mothers left. But the minute their mothers left, I began to make up stories that were true. Half true and half make up.
Uh-huh.
Because, I know what it was. I lived on a farm. I was still living on the farm. And the mother pig produced 6 little piglets.
Uh-huh.
And the mother died. And this was true. So every day I would tell the kids about my father went to the store and he bought little milk bottles with nipples on them, like babies feed.
Uh-huh.
And they bought 6 of them. And we each took 2 little pigs and we put milk in the bottles and let the little pigs, our 2 little pigs, suck the bottles. Well, the kids loved to hear about it. They went home and told her no television or anything like that. But they went home and told the story at night around the dinner table. So we even went to the farm to see the pigs.
Oh, my heavens.
And the nursing the mother pig. But the mother pig had died.
Uh-huh.
So, as I say, we got bottles, put milk in the bottles and put nipples, and they thought it was the mother they were nursing.
Oh, sure.
And the kids loved the stories. So every morning pretty soon I ran out of stories. So I began making up stories. Well, they liked the make-up ones better or just as good as the real ones. So, of course, that encouraged me to elaborate.
Exactly.
And I made up plenty of fiction stories. But it broke the ice for learning.
Yes. Yes.
And then it would be time to close the door to the hall, and we'd start the real school.
Uh-huh.
And the mothers would cry when the
course.
kids had never been to kindergarten or anywhere. I would have to say to the mothers, you have to leave now. And we'd have to put them out, and the mothers would cry, but time the mothers left, the kids were ready for adventure. They didn't cry anymore. So we had fun at first, but it broke the ice.
I'll wait for a clock to finish.
We're waiting for the clock. Whenever the clock strikes, we'll wait a little bit.
Oh, sure.
So,
That's a
because
good idea.
It is, because
Not even I can compete with that.
that's true.
Uh-huh.
Would you
So-
tell us a little bit about your decision to come to the Teachers College at Towson? When did you decide that?
When I first came to Towson,
Yes. You must have been, and were you in high school and then you decided that you would attend?
somebody came from Towson
Oh, okay.
to the school, to the high school, to
Uh-huh.
Glen Burnie High School.
Mhm.
And the same thing happened when I got to be a senior at Towson. I went back to Glen Burnie High School to get students, to tell them how wonderful it had been,
Uh-huh.
so they could enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember how many they got from Glen Burnie High, but they got some.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure they proved that what I had said was true.
Uh-huh.
And so they enjoyed coming back to high school and telling future high school, graduate classes
Uh-huh.
about. So it was a big success from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm. So you decided to come to the school, to the State Teachers College, and you decided that you would live on campus at Towson, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so tell us about when you first got to the campus, when you first became a student there.
We had when we first entered,
Uh-huh.
with the first week, it was just freshmen.
Oh, okay.
And it was wonderful. We got entertained. It was still warm September, early September. And they took us to I've forgotten where, but it was like a park. And they packed us a picnic supper. They made we were welcomed to this Maryland State Normal School, just like being welcomed into a family's home.
Uh-huh.
Only it was more of us, but that's how we got acquainted during freshman week.
Mm-hmm.
So freshman week, we took a few little tests, maybe one in the morning, but one in the afternoon. It was just freshmen. We would go on a picnic for supper. And of course they packed the supper for us, so it was pure luxury.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty soon we got down to business.
Uh-huh.
And we had entrance exams.
Yes.
And some were, I believe 1/3 were sent home.
Really?
Because it was Depression times.
Uh-huh.
And I guess people couldn't afford to go anywhere else. And I had saved my money ever since I was a child. Every cent we got, we put in the bank. And it took I'm not sure I had to pay anything
Tuition?
except for my room and board.
Mm-hmm.
And my bank account took care of the first year. Then it was exhausted. Then I had 2 brothers, and I borrowed one brother's every month for the next year, and for the next year, it was the other brother's money. And when I started teaching, then I started paying it back.
Uh-huh.
But my brothers didn't want me to pay theirs back because the bank was not paying 6%. The bank, where you deposited your
Right.
money. But I had been paying them 6% interest. So they were smart enough to know to know that and of course I tried to pay the loan off right away, so I didn't like that 6% interest, but they liked it, and they didn't want me to pay it back because the bank wouldn't give them 6%.
Right.
So that was the beginning of my business, money business. Wasn't much, but it meant
that was a lesson
6%
too.
was a lot.
Yes, it is a lot.
Yeah. But I was glad to get my debts paid off.
Absolutely.
And when I had first gone, you had to have somebody back you up, and financially. I forget that if you'd gotten your education, I had just paid in room and board, but if I had left when I graduated and had not taught, I would have had to pay back some of that.
I see. Some of the tuition.
Yeah. I would have. That's right.
Well, tell me a little bit about the courses that you took.
The what?
The courses, the preparation you had to become a teacher.
Well, we were divided into sections. And the city students were not mingled with the county students.
Interesting.
The city ones visited. First, we had observation, and the city students were taken by bus to city schools. And the county were taken by bus to Baltimore County schools.
And which group were you in?
How much what?
No, were you in the city group or the county group? You.
I was in the Anne Arundel County.
Oh, so you were part of the county group then.
Yeah. But I didn't student teach. I student taught at Dundalk for one thing. Now that's Baltimore County.
Yes.
And but I was taken by bus there, and as I say, first year was a group of us were taken by bus. Then the second year, I taught in the campus school, and the campus school was wonderful, way ahead of what rural Baltimore County was. And the Miss Brogan was the teacher of the second grade, and she was my. I think it was. She always observed what I did.
So she was.
And then she would give me a part of a loan, but she would, she was still in the room. But she was wonderful. The campus school was a good example. But all I remember is Dundalk and campus school. And it was a far cry away from one to the other.
Yes, very different.
Very different is right. Very different. But I really worked hard on my lessons, because when it was turned over to me, it was, I wanted to be a success. But I was being observed. And it was, I was wishing I could do it without it being observed.
Yes.
And eventually, you expressed that. Your teacher met with you and said, what would you have rather have had? And I would tell her, not have you in the room. Because I was afraid I wasn't giving the right answers or doing the right things. And I was trying to please her. And eventually, they let me have that right. They would go out and make sure that I knew they were nowhere they could see me or hear me for a little while. So that was enjoyable, but when I was being watched, I was a different person.
Yes. Yes.
So, but I enjoyed it. But I worked hard. I made the lesson plans just the way you're supposed to and write them down. But I hate to tell you that it was the end of the lesson plans written down when I graduated. Because I never knew when I started a class how I might finish it. One thing would often lead to another.
Yes.
And it would be turn out sometimes to be a fun thing and turn out sometimes to be absurd, which was a sort of not realistic. I like to be alone with the children. And the teacher would, my teacher would leave the room very obviously, so I could know that I could do anything I really wanted, and I really tried. And as far as I know, everything worked out beautifully. I never, we had criticism, but it was good criticism. It was saying, well, I would say, well, what else could you've done? And they would tell me. And I would try to do that. So it was, I tried my very best, but I didn't worry about it like I would today. When you're older, you worry, but when you're a teenager, you don't worry. Right. You worry, but it's a different kind of a worry.
It is. It is indeed.
Yeah.
Now, you had said that you also learned an awful lot at Towson that was not in the classroom, that you learned a lot from living in the dormitory as well.
Yes, yes. But dormitory life was wonderful. And we had a doctor. Oh, when I went there, I had the most embarrassing things when I entered. The summer before, I went to all kinds of doctors. I had warts all over both hands. And they were in patches, one on top of the other. I tried every remedy I ever heard. I went to doctors, they tried. One doctor had me using acid to get the warts off my hands. They would burn so much at night, but nothing worked. As soon as I entered the dorm, here we had a lady doctor and her husband doctor. Guess what they did?
I can't imagine.
They took like a little sharp scoop, scooped out, one hand at a time, all the warts. It was trembled so bad by the ends of the nerves being touched that I had to just do one arm at a time in a sling. Well, when it healed, they did the arm, and the warts never came back.
Wonderful.
But it was under Hopkins supervision that the doctor in the dorm worked for. And it was the most wonderful blessing I ever had, because the warts had ruined my life.
And they never returned.
They never went. And we tried everything. But the way, they knew just what to do.
Exactly.
But it was an ordeal, but I was so happy when the one worked. I did the second one.
Yes.
The second hand. Oh, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my freshman year. It was physical, and the doctor. It was Dr. Abercrombie and her husband. They were both doctors at Hopkins. They had an office in the dorm.
Interesting.
And I would report to that in the mornings, every morning. And they would encourage me and say, it's working.
There you go.
And it took time, but it worked. To my knowledge, I'm knock on wood, I've never had a wart on a hand since.
Well, tell us a little bit about dorm life. At some point, maybe in your last year, didn't you serve as the head of the dorm council or something like that? Tell us a little bit about living in the dorm.
Living in the dorm?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'll tell you one good thing. The food was wonderful to begin with. Wonderful. Miss Diefendorfer just graduated from college. I forgot where. But at any rate, she would post, yeah.
Hold on. Okay, tell us about Mrs. Diefendorfer.
She would post the menu for the day on the bulletin board. Well, some things were so good that we began asking for recipes. So I'm sure we all took home for our first Thanksgiving. It was the raw cranberries ground up with the orange. I think it was just real oranges. And sugar, because cranberries are need a little sugar. And so we all took that recipe home. I bet everybody who lived in that dorm had that cranberry relish for their things. And that began things. She often put a recipe that everybody asked for in the bulletin board. And she had just graduated, so she was young and enthusiastic. So we sort of caught that from her. So really, I learned as much for food preparation as I did in the classroom.
There you go.
It was and I wasn't the only one. And then I still have those some of the recipes.
And still use them today. So, and you still use some of those recipes today.
Yes. Well, the cranberries you just I even bought a food chopper. And
There you go.
Yeah, and you put a little grated orange peel and sugar and little bits of orange. Now, as far as I know, it was just that. But it's the recipe lasted my lifetime. Lasted my lifetime.
And you lived in a room in the dorm? You lived in a room with 2 other girls?
My room?
Yes.
Well, first thing I learned in the room was how to miter a corner, as I said. They showed us how to make a bed, and they inspected. You never knew when they were going to inspect your room. But we found out once that it was every Thursday. So when we found out, they changed our day. And you know how rushing out, somebody just pulled the bedspread up, but we did ours the very best on Thursday because we knew that was an inspection day. And we got to enjoy a well-made bed. But some people, I'm sure, still never know how to make a well-made bed. But I learned how to there. I just had to make the beds at home on the farm. But I just tucked them in. I didn't miter any corners because I didn't even know what miter was. But so we learned a lot of practical things. And I remembered the practical as well as anything else or everything. Some things else, let's put it that way. But I learned a lot in the dorm.
Yes.
And I would say 1/3 of my learning was in the dorm.
There you go. Let me ask you this. You graduated in 3 years.
Yes.
And where did you go? Did you take a teaching position back in Anne Arundel County?
Oh, yes. They saved. I was the first one who got a. Now, not city students. City students were so different. In those days, city schools were far better than county schools. But I was the first one who got a county school appointment. I asked for first grade, and I got first grade.
You did.
And I didn't want. Maybe I got first and second, but I didn't really want first and second because I thought I'd be lucky if I learned how to do first no, I wanted second. That's what it was, but second was not available. But when I first came up, I got it. And I was the first one in Anne Arundel County in that year
Yes.
to get a job. And of course, and it was it was under a principal who was very exacting, which was good. Because when you start off, you try to please.
Yes.
So we got along beautifully. And I only taught 5 years, but I taught all 5 years at the same school, same grade.
Right.
And I enjoyed it. And I lived on just 8 blocks from the school. I boarded 8 blocks from the school and walked those 8 blocks in the morning and evening, which was just the right exercise physically. No matter it was snow or rain, I walked.
Yes.
And it was good. So I profited in more ways than one. And more ways than finance. And I paid back all my school debts. First year, it took 3 years. And because I didn't give them every cent I got. I had to pay room and board and that kind of stuff. But to the last couple of years, I lived on the same block where I had boarded. I had an apartment there. So that was an experience also.
It was.
And I would take on parent-teacher night, all the teachers, instead of going back into the city, most of them were from the city, they would go home and have a little supper in my apartment, and we'd go back for the PTA. So it was a lot of fun, because when you're young, you can make adjustments more easily.
Yes.
So I loved my teaching experience, but at the same time, I would not want to raise children and be a teacher, because I think raising a child even is very important that a mother be in the home. And of course, that day I guess is over, but it was the times sort of demanded it.
Yes. Yes.
So I guess I'm saying too much.
No, not at all. So after 5 years, did you get married?
Oh yes, I had a child, and I had I had a good friend who lived around the corner from me, who had two little boys who were preschool, and she was an artist, and she was taking lessons in Washington under some famous man for teaching. And so those two little boys came over to my house every Tuesday and Thursday, and we had a classroom in our basement.
You did?
With my daughter and those two boys' neighbors. And they were about all the same age, first, second, and third, so grades. So we had, as I say, Tuesday and Thursday mornings with the neighbor boys in my basement. And I think they learned a lot preschool, too.
I'm sure.
Then my daughter was born in January. Of course, you have to wait until next September to enter in those days. They did not have public kindergarten.
Right.
But my neighbor had children who went to Gibson Island, where they did have a private kindergarten. And she would take her boys, one was a nephew and one was her own, in the first grade, to Glen Burnie and get on the Gibson Island bus. And they would take them to the Gibson Island school. So, said, come on, we'll take your little girl with our boys. And the same thing happened. And she had her whole first grade on Gibson Island. That's one road she knew. And so she would show us what was where,
Uh-huh.
where we're to go. So we learned Gibson Island. And she had a wonderful beginning because they put them on the bus with the black uh, people who worked on Gibson Island cleaning the houses and cooks.
Uh-huh.
A lot of them were cooks.
Uh-huh.
So my daughter learned a lot
Uh-huh.
just coming and going to school in Gibson Island. So it's kind of fun to have life experiences even when you're 5 years old.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and to her dying days, she knew what happened and where.
Uh-huh.
And Gibson Island, we got to explore it. Have a wonderful time exploring it. There's some gorgeous homes that are well guarded against intruders, but in those days they weren't that private. And so they would have the kids I think they only had the first and second grades, and they would have a group come to a certain home. And then when my daughter was a church organ player,
Mm-hmm.
she would substitute for the organ whenever they needed her when she was grown up.
Uh-huh.
Because some of the people had been, who were mothers then, had been grown-up children then.
Right. So she probably knew some of those mothers.
Uh-huh. So we had, even though we were country, we had a lot of good experiences.
It sounds like it.
Uh-huh. So,
Well, is there anything else you would like to share with us about your teaching career or your preparation to become a teacher? Or is there any...
well, in those days you were invited into the homes for dinner, and you got to know the children better when you were in their home and ate at their table.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my daughter started school, we invited. She wanted. I would invite the teacher home, and there was they had their first man teacher in the 5th grade.
Uh-huh.
And those who didn't want to play on the playground could stay in, and he would give them what they called a dance lesson, and he would dance with each one of them during the noon recess.
Uh-huh.
And that was wonderful. Today was going to be the day for their turn. And it was things like that made school more. And the man visited in the home.
Uh-huh.
And it was things like that people don't have time for today.
Yes.
But they were made good memories and good acquaintances and good cooperation. So, I guess I've told you everything I know.
Well, you've told us a lot of things. We're so appreciative that you were willing to let us into your home to do this. They were wonderful stories. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk. You can tell I love to talk. And I don't have much opportunity in this house alone.
Yeah.
But a minister takes care of me.
Uh-huh.
And he's very thoughtful, and he tells me I'm in my second childhood now. He tells me absolutely no to some of my suggestions.
Uh-huh.
But I'm still a child, so some of them I take and some of them I don't.
There you go. Thank you.
And thank you for brightening up my Monday. My Mondays are never like this.
We came in and rearranged your house and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And to her dying days, she knew what happened and where. And Gibson Island, we got to explore, have a wonderful time exploring it. There's some gorgeous homes that are well guarded against intruders, but in those days they weren't that private. And so they would have the kids I think they only had the first and second grades, and they would have a group come to certain home. And then when my daughter was a church organ player, she would substitute for the organ whenever they needed her when she was grown up. Because some of the people had been, who were mothers then, had been grown-up children then.
Right. So she probably knew some of those mothers.
So we had, even though we were country, we had a lot of good experiences.
It sounds like it.
So,
Well, is there anything else you would like to share with us about your teaching career or your preparation to become a teacher? Or is there any...
well, in those days you were invited into the homes for dinner, and you got to know the children better when you were in their home and ate at their table. And so when my daughter started school, we invited, she wanted, I would invite the teacher home, and there was they had their first man teacher in the 5th grade. And those who didn't, who didn't want to play on the playground, could stay in, and he would give them what they called a dance lesson, and he would dance with each one of them during the noon recess. And that was wonderful. Today was going to be the day for their turn. And it was things like that that made school more, and the man visited in the home. And it was things like that people don't have time for today.
Yes.
But they were made good memories and good acquaintances and good cooperation. So, I guess I've told you everything I know.
Well, you've told us a lot of things. We're so appreciative that you were willing to let us into your home to do this. They were wonderful stories. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk. You can tell I love to talk. And I don't have much opportunity in this house alone.
Yeah.
But a minister takes care of me. And he's very thoughtful, and he tells me I'm in my second childhood now. He tells me absolutely no to some of my suggestions. But I'm still a child, so some of them I take and some of them I don't.
There you go. Thank you.
And thank you for brightening up my Monday. My Mondays are never like this.